Well guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're gonna review a movie I had no idea existed until the recent controversies of Resident Evil 8 Village, and that is Frankenstein's Army. Frankenstein's Army is a movie that came out in 2013 and was one that I never knew existed. And for me, loving found footage horror movies, I know, I'm one of those guys. But I can't help it because of how much the Blair Witch Project affected me as a kid when it first came out. I love found footage horror films, especially if they're done right. And Frankenstein's Army, I am very happy to report, is kick fucking ass.
What are you? Can you hear me? Let's put you out of your misery.
I think I've heard of this movie before, but the reason why I never watched it is because there were so many garbage Frankenstein type movies coming out. I honestly thought it was I, Frankenstein, and I'm very happy that it's not.
Victor Frankenstein.
It's alive. It's alive!
The plot of the movie: a squad of Russian soldiers looking for their lost comrades during World War II. As the soldiers are getting closer to their destination, they're finding things that look very peculiar, to say the least. Tank armaments with human bodies attached to them, and it looked like something out of Alien. And right away, you can tell, and the Russian soldiers can tell, that something's not right here. Due to this being set in World War II, the Russian soldiers think everything is the Nazis. Any kind of weird thing that they find must be the Nazis. Any kind of distress signal blocker must be the Nazis. But as they get closer to their destination, they're finding more and more dead Nazi soldiers, along with a whole town of people who seem to have been massacred. Don't get this confused. The Russian soldiers are not guys that you want to feel bad for. They are bad characters from what they establish in the opening of the film. So everything that you see that happens to them, you're actually kind of happy it happens to them because they are such assholes. So as they get closer to this town, they happen upon a church. And this church is definitely more than meets the eye. As they delve deeper into this, it's nothing but a hellacious nightmare. Imagine the game The Suffering, mixed in with Hellraiser, mixed in with Event Horizon, and you have Frankenstein's Army. This is how this film works as a found footage movie, because all of the monsters that you see in this film are not CGI at all. This movie does all practical effects. If this movie at all used CGI when it came to the monsters and how horrific they were, the movie would have been really bad. But because it's all practical effects, these are all costumes, and it looks so grungy and dirty and horrific. This movie is just like, I felt the tension. I felt on edge every time someone was being chased by one of these things, because you could just imagine having yourself ripped apart by mangled pieces of metal. This movie was obviously very influential to Capcom, because Capcom in Resident Evil 8 Village definitely took a few of these monster designs and put them in their game. Hence how I even found out about this movie in the first place. Upon playing the game and seeing the news about this movie and the director calling out Capcom, I was like, how close can this be? I watched the movie and it's pretty damn close. It's a great creature design. And I could see why the guy would be annoyed. If he was like a huge fan of Capcom huge fan of Resident Evil, and he's playing the game that he bought from Capcom, and they're using his monster design that he's getting no money from. I could see that being very upsetting and insulting. I would be. If Capcom has any decency, which I'm hoping they do, they will pay this guy some royalties for using his ideas. Obviously, it can't be disputed or argued that the monsters in this level, a lot of them, are taken from that movie, heavily inspired by. And the fact that the guy wasn't contacted by Capcom, wasn't alerted to the fact until after he bought the game and saw the creatures, or someone on his team, or someone he knew personally that was a part of the movie, saw these creatures and alerted him to the fact, would be very upsetting. So hopefully Capcom has decency where they're going to give him some money, or something, or acknowledge it at least. Acknowledge the fact that the monsters came from that. So, do the right thing, Capcom. Do it. I don't know the exact details. I don't know if the director or someone that had something to do with the movie bought Resident Evil 8 and got to the part where you're fighting these monsters and was like, what the fuck? I mean, if that's the case, that's pretty screwed up for Capcom to do that. There's one thing of being highly influenced by something and making something similar to that, and then straight up taking the exact design and putting it into your game or movie without anybody's knowledge, anybody's consent, without paying anyone. Pretty fucked up move. So I'm hoping Capcom do the right thing and pay this guy, because you can't argue with what you see. Another thing that you can tell that this movie was also inspired by, I feel like, was Tetsuo the Iron Man from the 80s, the Japanese horror film. Anything that has to do with metal fetishism, where it's, you know, human cyborg skin being ripped apart and they're combined, and I mean, it just like The Suffering, the video game, everything else, it's horrific to see. The creatures and monster designs are super fucking awesome. I don't think I've seen something as nasty looking in a long time, since like the 80s. I love how Dr. Frankenstein is actually portrayed in this, not as a scientist who just wanted to create something and cheat death. No, he's just a fucking crazy person. That's it. He's got the god complex and he's fucking nuts. That's why all these monsters exist. That's why he doesn't care that the whole town that he lived by was massacred. He doesn't give a shit about the war. All he cares about is creating more and more monsters.
A man of vision is always misunderstood. But the film in your camera will convince the doctors. You're insane! I'm not a doctor! You're sick! Oh, you hear me? I'm sick! Everybody is sick! The Nazis! Communists! Capitalists! Everyone! The sickness that cannot be cured. So it must be cut out. And my creations will do that. Your creations are fucking insanity! Look at them! They're fucking cripples!
So as the movie continues and the plot thickens, it turns out that one of the officers in the Russian squad is not who he actually appears or acts to be. He actually has motives behind why these guys are here and why they haven't been able to get communication with their actual squad leaders. Turns out this guy was tasked with bringing back Dr. Frankenstein, alive or dead, and all of his research in hopes of using his monsters as weapons in the war. It makes absolute sense when you think about how the Russian Federation was and the Nazis were. They both would have been competing to get these monsters. Unfortunately, what they didn't know is they're going to be facing walking atrocities that are basically bulletproof and can cut a man into pieces within a matter of seconds. For a found footage horror film, I feel like you can do a lot worse. This movie has low scores on most of every movie rating platform. I'm not really sure why. I've seen way worse found footage horror movies. And this one I feel like was original. I liked the storyline. There are some parts that are kind of like laughable because they're horror movie tropey, but at the same time, it's the monsters are what steal the show. The practical effects in themselves are so impressive that I don't know how anyone cannot respect this movie just for that alone. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give Frankenstein Village an 8. While the story's not complex, it's a found footage horror movie, it makes sense for what it's trying to display as far as the Russian Federation and the Nazis wanting to find these monsters to use them in the war. What I thought was a great twist, like I said, was Dr. Frankenstein just being a crazy fuck the entire movie. They don't really explain how and why the monsters all listen to Dr. Frankenstein, other than the fact that he's their creator. That's not really explained, and unfortunately you don't get to learn very much about the backstory of why Frankenstein came to be in this village and why he's here making these monsters underneath this church. And I think the movie's set up that way so you're just as confused as the Russian soldiers were. This movie does everything that a found footage horror movie I feel like should do. Make you feel on edge, make you feel claustrophobic, and make you never really feel safe. You're in just as much danger as being the audience member as the character in the movie. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this movie review, Frankenstein's Army. Very good film, and if you haven't played Resident Evil Village to see where the character creature designs are basically ripped off, go check it out. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next movie review. Later.